All right, we are live with another Talks with Alex, and tonight it's going to kind of be a more serious topic. Um, so tonight we're going to talk about the CARES Act. There's a lot of stuff that's going on right now. We are still in the middle of the pandemic, and quite a few people have not been able to receive payments, or there's some things that a lot of people need as far as help to kind of get through this process. I kind of want to have a talk. Initially, I had a panel full of people, but because of the storm, some people had to back out. But I was very, very pleased to have the chief of staff of my Congressman Dwight Evans, who represents the 3rd District of Pennsylvania, to come on and kind of give us a bit of information about the CARES Act. So I'm going to introduce him in a second. But I just also want to say, you guys can follow me. This is going to be streaming live on my Facebook pages. So I'm Alex Deering. You can do it on my personal page, or you can stream this live on my live page, or it's also going to be on YouTube. Just go to search Talks with Alex on YouTube, and you should be able to find my page, like it, and then subscribe, and you can get an update when I do these live videos. Okay, so I'm going to go and introduce my guest, Anuj Gupta. He is the chief of staff to Congressman Dwight Evans, who represents the 3rd District of Pennsylvania. Alrighty, so hello, Anuj.
How are you, Alex?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for being on here tonight to kind of discuss what's going on. All right.
And there's a lot going on.
I'm sure this has to be a crazy time for you, right? It's very different from Ready Terminal.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So I want to kind of just talk about the CARES Act a little bit and some of the things that are happening in it. So I'm going to kind of bring up the graphic that I have that kind of just outlines some of the stuff that's happening in the CARES Act, right? So the COVID negotiations just happened on yesterday. Well, some of the negotiations happened on yesterday, and some of the things that were proposed in that package were the Democrats were looking to put $915 billion in state and local governments. They were saying that this money was needed to kind of help the economies because a lot of the people in the government were some of the states were needing help because their economies are struggling. And the Republicans were saying that they are really kind of against kind of bolstering governments. And so they were suggesting kind of like $0. And but they said that there was a little bit of flexibility in that. Of course, it's testing and tracing. The Democrats were proposing $75 billion. The Republicans are proposing $16 billion in new money. We have SNAP and food aid. The Democrats are suggesting $15 billion. The Republicans are suggesting none. In the Republicans' defense, they are saying that they are going to make up for this money in the SNAP and food aid because they're saying that they are going to put dollars, the food that's going to be offered in the school lunches in the schools will make up for the SNAP and food aid. So that's where they're saying. Election help, the Democrats are saying $3.6 billion. The Republicans are suggesting none. The second slide, we are looking unemployment. Of course, the Democrats are looking to keep the 600 and do it through December. The Republicans are saying that they want to lower that to $200. So we're looking at a discussion between $200 and $600 per month. Democrats are suggesting through December. Republicans are looking for a short-term extension and lessening that money. We're looking at direct payments. It seems like everybody's pretty much on the same page with the $1,200, which will be good for people like me. I believe that the Republicans were looking to lower the income range on where they were going to give that. And they were talking about schools where we see the difference, right? Where the Democrats are suggesting $90 billion and the Republicans are suggesting $105 billion. And this will also go to religious schools and private schools to kind of help them out too. And then for the last, I mean, there's a couple of other things that are on the discussion. We're talking about childcare, evictions and utilities, small businesses, liability protection, Medicaid, postal service, census, Native, Black, and underserved communities, agriculture producers, and specific industries. So this is just kind of give you a general sense of what they're looking for in the package. And this was more so for the people watching and not necessarily you, Anuj, but I just kind of wanted to frame the discussion for some of my guests so they can kind of understand how big this package is and what exactly they're looking for. So as I always do is to say, guys, please feel free to comment. If you agree with something, say yes. Go ahead. If you have any questions, we'll do our best to answer those questions for you. I will be more than happy to engage you. So, Anuj, let me ask you, with all of this stuff inside this bill, what do you think the priorities should be for this bill?
Well, the priorities are far more than what the Republicans are suggesting, or what the Trump administration has suggested should take the format of a short-term bill. Immediately, we have a crisis that just started on Friday because of their obstinance and unwillingness to come to the table and make a reasonable deal. So as of Friday, the $600 a week unemployment extension or boost, however you want to describe it, that was added in the original CARES Act has expired. Now, we know that many people, thousands of people, by the way, if they were fortunate enough to actually get the cash in the door, because there have been a lot of issues with claims being made months ago. So I'm talking about March and April, and folks still haven't seen the money come into their bank account. But if they were lucky to get the money, and that is a nationwide problem, I'm happy to talk about that. But if they're lucky enough to get the money, that $600 has put food on the table, has made sure that rent is paid, has made sure that utilities are covered, all of the basic essentials, and that ripples through the economy. If the rent is paid, that means the landlord is able to cover their mortgage. That means the bank isn't foreclosing on the building. And that's just one example of how it sort of ripples through the economy. So folks have been relying on that. That's a critical need, and it needs to continue. Number one. Number two is the eviction and foreclosure moratoriums. So we know the numbers. And if we were to allow all of the renters and homeowners that are now in arrears to face foreclosure and eviction at the same time, we would have an economic cataclysm beyond anything that we have just seen over the last 4 months, because the entire real estate industry will lose its value. The cash flow that supports real estate, that allows debt service to occur, will simply fall apart. Now, there will be a time and a place where folks have to catch up on rent. They have to catch up on their debt service, on mortgages. But to allow it to all happen at once, if you don't subscribe to the moral argument or the humane argument for allowing that not to happen, then realize the economic argument, which is it will. We already have a shattered economy. You can then take the broken glass and put it under the dirt. Okay, that's how bad it will be. So those are just two of the priorities. But I saw that you one of your questions was, do state and local governments really need immediate aid? And
Yes.
And Senator Mitch McConnell made a statement, and I think he's backed away from this, realizing the irrelevance of his comment. But he made a statement early on, back in June. He said, well, just let states declare bankruptcy. Well, Senator McConnell, if you want to see an economic tsunami, go ahead, let your states, including your state, declare bankruptcy. Let's see what happens to the banking industry, the credit markets. Donald Trump keeps talking about how great the stock market is doing. I mean, the stock market is not reflective of what happens in everyday America. But let those states declare bankruptcy. See what happens to your beloved stock market then. So for folks that are living in cities and they are living their day-to-day lives, even though they can't leave their homes, they can't send their kids to school, they can't go to a playground, they can only go shopping for groceries and do other limited things, the impact that these cuts on state and local government have are very immediate and very obvious.
Okay.
So the answer is, it is unemployment, it is housing, it is nationwide testing and tracing, which we as the most developed country in the nation have put no thought or investment towards.
Mhm.
And it is state and local aid. I mean, those are just some of the priorities that need to be addressed in this next package.
Okay. And so then let me ask you a question. I mean, you're talking about state and local aid. And so we're talking, so let's go back to the whole schools thing, right? We're talking
Yeah.
about we're giving money for the schools. And you saw the difference between where they said the Democrats were looking at 95 and the Republicans were looking at 105. And their argument was is that, you know, they were saying that the school lunches would kind of pacify the need instead of having to give money for SNAP. I saw Nancy Pelosi was saying that she felt like the priorities between the Democrats and the Republicans were just kind of different, and they didn't want to do some sort of a piecemeal package band-aiding this issue. How do you feel about the government? I mean, the Republicans trying to maneuver the money in as far as the schools and just not considering the whole family as a whole.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things to break down there. Number one, the school aid that they are proposing is tied in large part, at least 50% of it, to schools reopening. Okay.
Okay.
And I'm a parent. Look, I have a child in the Philadelphia school district. I have a child in another school in Philadelphia. I would love to see the schools reopen. I don't think there's any form of virtual learning through which they get the full educational experience that all kids need. But that's the ideal, and then there's reality. Okay. And in reality, our school buildings, particularly in the Philadelphia School District, these buildings are old. They have decades of deferred maintenance. They have insufficient filtration and ventilation systems. I can go on down the line. There's so many reasons for which the school physical plant, and it applies in Philadelphia, it applies in other urban areas. Frankly, it applies in a lot of suburban areas. They are not well equipped to make sure that kids and teachers and staff and parents can all be in and around the school environment safely. All right. And if the numbers of the coronavirus continue to increase, like we are seeing in many states, they are increasing, including in Pennsylvania. Now, we were on the downward trend for a while, and now we're seeing numbers come back up. If the virus continues to be out of control, until we have a national strategy, which I don't see happening under this administration, then how on earth are we going to get aid to schools contingent upon them staying open? It's no different than right now. There's an estimate that something like 3% of Center City office workers are actually coming into the office. Well, if office workers don't feel safe enough to come into a modern skyscraper, right, with modern ventilation systems, with proper HVAC systems, then how on earth can we tell kids, parents, teachers, principals, etc., that they need to come back into their buildings? So the expectation that 50% of the aid is tied to schools reopening is it's like they're creating a delusion, just distracting attention that they are on paper putting more money towards public education, but in reality, far less will be afforded to public schools. So that's number one. And then that segues into your other point about SNAP. We already have seen the deficiencies, and you can talk to Lori Jones at Phil Abundance. You can talk to other providers in the hunger relief space. We've already seen the consequences and limitations of kids that are not in school every day, the inability to get them the food and their families the food that they need. So if you were to extend the school lunch program, that sounds very good and very generous. If schools aren't open, the ability of households to access that food is limited.
Mhm.
And so again, it's another sort of mirage that they are creating, that they are professing to do the right thing, make the right investment. In practice, very little of that investment will get to the households it's meant to help.
So then let's talk a little bit about households, right? I mean, one of the biggest issues that we have right now is that people now are about to not get this extra $600 in unemployment, which has kind of been helping people.
Yeah.
And we saw that they said over a quarter of the people in our country have missed mortgage and rent payments. Donald Trump has said that we want to take care of the eviction problem, and he wants to make sure that people are not being evicted unfairly. He has also moved to say that he would try to do something through executive order to try to make sure that people stay in their homes. Mitch McConnell has also signaled that he is open to some of these things. So how important is it, or why is it important for us to kind of extend this moratorium for evictions?
Well, they know that the eviction foreclosure crisis, as well as the unemployment crisis, they cross red and blue states. They cross rural and urban areas. Right now, everyone is affected. And so if Speaker Pelosi and Senator Schumer and others said, okay, we'll agree to a short-term deal. Short-term, let's say that's 2 months, 3 months. Well, guess what? We're on August 3rd, August 4th right now.
Mhm.
It just so happens that Donald Trump's reelection is on November 3rd. So it would look very good for him and the Republicans to have unemployment taken care of, have the housing moratoriums extended through the duration of this period preceding the election. And then if he were afforded another 4 years, boy, oh boy, the damage the damage that has been done to date, even pre-pandemic, you can double down on that, because this will be Donald Trump unfiltered. There will be no checks or balances on this administration. You can't impeach a already impeached president, and his care for the unemployed and those that are facing eviction or foreclosure, those folks will be out the window. So that is why the Speaker, and Senator Schumer are standing fast and saying, no, we're not going to take a short-term deal, because they know what the Republicans are trying to push through and what the implications will be after the election.
So then let me ask you a question, and let me just let you know for the watchers that are just now coming in. This is Anuj Gupta. He is the chief of staff for my congressman, Dwight Evans, the 3rd Congressional District of Pennsylvania. So I just want to ask you one thing. So what elements in the bill do you think are worth compromising on, or what elements in the bill do you think we could, or would you feel comfortable compromising on?
Well, it's not my call. It's the congressman's call. It's his leadership call,
Yeah.
and it's the Senate Democrats' call. But here's what I would say.
Okay.
We have to realize that the pandemic has created the need for immediate short-term relief. And it has also highlighted and exacerbated many long-running deep crises in American society that affect healthcare access, that affect job security, that affect basic day-to-day living needs. They affect wages. They affect, all kinds of things. And what what the pandemic provides as an opportunity, if you could identify one silver lining, is that it gives us a chance to make some fundamental changes, right? And when you layer on the civil unrest that we have seen during the course of the summer and the raising of the need for racial equity on the top of the priority list, and whether folks are just paying lip service to it or not, that it is at least coming out of their mouths, there's an opportunity for fundamental change. And so the compromise, I hope, is along the lines of, yes, the immediate short-term need, the unemployment assistance, the housing assistance, so on and so forth. But it also starts to affect some of those fundamental investment areas. One of the things that I'm most excited about, and the congressman is a deep supporter of this, is the highlight that this pandemic has put on our childcare system. We have you think we underinvest in public education? You should look at our childcare system. And all of the data shows that some of the most formative years in a child's life are those pre-K years. And yet we have a system where we are paying people, even in quality childcare centers, however it's defined, and that varies from state to state, we are paying people poverty wages, right? These are folks that are taking care of our children, what we describe as our most valuable thing in our lives. And we're paying them $25,000 a year to take care of them and educate them and giving them the strong foundation that they need. Are you kidding me? No other country, no other developed country so underinvests in childcare. You think that's what Germany does? You think that's what China does? You just look around the rest of the world. And so for the first time, I think that the pandemic has put a necessary spotlight on the childcare system and the folks that are working in it, and realizing leadership is seeing how underinvested this system is. And that's the kind of fundamental change that I hope there can be some compromise on. We have long needed additional investment in our childcare system in this country. It should have happened before the pandemic. We should be ashamed of ourselves if it doesn't happen during the pandemic. And by the way, if Donald Trump really wants to get people back to work, well, then he better make the childcare system work. Because folks aren't going back to work if their schools are closed, which they need to be, and they have no other safe place to send their kids.
Yeah, so let me ask you a question. Do you think that the $600 a week, this extra $600 a week in unemployment subsidy is going to deter people from going back to work? Because that is actually the Republican argument, and that's the reason why they want to lower it. They're saying that this $600 federal unemployment supplement discourages people from returning to work. How do you respond to that?
Couple things. Number one, there was an objective, nonpartisan study that came out this week from Yale University, and it is very clearly demonstrated that folks were not deterred from going back to work because of the $600 added benefit. Okay, so let's just say, the data is there to substantiate that. But let's just say you don't subscribe to the data, okay? Let's say you don't buy into research. Well, then, if you agree that one of the ways that we can fight this pandemic and loosen the grip that the virus has on society right now is by simply keeping people apart, maintaining social distancing, which is very difficult in most workplaces, then the incentive to stay home and not take a job is in the public interest. It is in the interest of fighting this virus and getting through it as fast as we can. And if you look at the nations that have actually addressed this quickly and effectively. What they did was they invested in systems through which employees were paid directly through their employer by the government, anywhere from 70 to 80% of the wages they were making. They were paid to stay home, but they were paid enough, and you can look at Germany. Germany is a good example of this. They were paid enough to stay home and be able to pay the rent, put food on the table, pay for basic needs. And so they didn't have an incentive to not stay home when work becomes available and it's safe to go out there, but they had enough of incentive to stay home and maintain the general public good and fight the virus as effectively as we can right now, which is by staying apart from one another. We don't have an effective vaccine. We don't know if what they introduce, presumably this fall, as Trump keeps saying, will be effective or not. And so the only surefire way of addressing this pandemic is by staying apart from one another, wearing the mask, using all the now normalized PPE materials. And so that's my point is simply, if you don't buy into the data, but you think that the pandemic is a problem, then you should still support the additional $600 a week.
Okay, and so then final question for you, and I just want to say thank you so much for coming on. I mean, you have been
this is fun. I apologize, I can't stay longer.
No, you've been an amazing supporter and a great a friend and an associate of mine. So I do appreciate you for saying yes and doing the best you can to make sure that this is a really good discussion. I just have one more question, and I just want to kind of get it out here. Is this how long do you think it's going to take for something to pass? I mean, today Mitch McConnell signaled openness to jobless aid extension, and that the Republicans have opposed and looking to like really come up with a deal, because this is hurting our country by them not getting the extension of the relief unemployment supplement. So how long do you think this is going to take? I mean, I know this is a new process for you, but how long do you think it's going to take for us to try to get down a path of where we're going to do something? Do you think we'll get this done before the recess?
Again, one of the few silver linings of having a worldwide pandemic is that the virus has not concentrated itself in metro areas or urban areas. The virus has decided it loves the entire United States. It loves suburban areas, it loves rural areas, and it loves every state in America. And so it is everywhere. And the impact of the virus is everywhere. Unemployment, lockdowns, inability to access sufficient health care. I can go on down the line. What does that mean politically then? It means that Republicans have just as much of an interest as Democrats to go back home to their districts. They have a little thing called an election coming up. And it's and actually, if you can give me another minute, I do want to comment on voting. But
Go ahead.
So my point is, it's August 3rd now. They have a session scheduled in September. Congress does, and then they break for the election. They are not going to go back home, Republicans or Democrats, empty-handed. There's simply no way. And so I'm quite optimistic that there will be a deal. It may not reflect the full breadth of the HEROES Act, which was the largest potential investment in American society that this government would have ever made in its history. That's what the Democratic House approved in early June. But I don't believe it will be as insufficient as what McConnell and the Republicans sent over last week to the House in their $1 trillion package. I am optimistic that there will be a deal. It will be in the next couple of weeks, and it may not address everything, but I think it will address those, what I described as those short-term needs, and make some headway in some of the fundamental long-running issues that we are now reflecting on in society. So, look, if you want to gamble on this, I guess there's always some odds, but I'll bet on the Congress doing something soon.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming on to my show. I am going to go ahead and if you have, oh, well, let's do this. Do you have anything that you want to leave with my community? Any positive or inspirational quotes? And if you can, is there a way that we can what's the best way to contact you or the congressman's office to let them know what they feel or if they have any questions?
Sure. I don't want to part with an inspirational quote. What I do want to part with is there are two absolutely critical things happening right now and coming up, which I ask folks, please take 5 minutes, 10 minutes max to complete this. Because if you don't, the implications are so significant. So let's start with number one, which is the census, the 2020 census. Right now, we are seeing the lowest participation rate of any district represented by the Congressional Black Caucus, which is most of the major urban areas in America. We are seeing the lowest participation rate in Philadelphia, only about 49%. What does that mean? If we don't get a proper count of the number of people living in our city and their demographic profile, that absolutely means that we will get far less federal aid in housing, in healthcare, in transportation, the whole 9 yards. And it will put our city at a significant disadvantage for the next 10 years till the next census is done. Okay? The census, it takes literally 10 minutes to do it. You can do it online, you can do it on the phone, you can do it in paper. All you have to do is go to census.gov and start the process. I cannot overstate how important this is. So that's number one. Number two, November 3rd is the general election. And every election cycle, and you know this, Alex, because you've been around politics for a long time. Every election cycle, candidates will tell you, this is the most important election in our lifetime. If this is not the most important election in my lifetime, I don't want to see. I really don't want to see what the circumstances are in the future that make an election more important than this. Because all that means is that we have fallen to such a level in this nation. We have fallen to such a level of distress. It's unimaginable. If Donald Trump gets another 4 years, the consequences to any kind of racial equity that has been discussed this summer, any kind of chance for folks in low to moderate income communities to have a path out, any kind of a chance for kids to get a decent public education, any kind of a chance for our country to have any standing on the global stage, it's done. It's done. It's done. It's done. And if you don't believe that now, I don't know what to say then, because this man has done exactly what he promised his base he would do and then some over the last 4 years. The damage will take a generation to recover from. And so if you are uncomfortable voting in person, and that's understandable because you have to go to a public place, there are other people there, you have to wait in a long line. Fortunately, in Pennsylvania, we now have the option to vote by mail. I'm not talking about absentee voting. You used to have a reason to get an absentee ballot and send that in if you needed to. Now you can choose to vote by mail simply as a matter of convenience. And it's safe, it's secure, there is no threat, there's no ability to compromise your ballot. If you don't feel comfortable putting it in the mailbox, you can take it down to City Hall and drop it off in a safe, secure location, not encounter people in the process of doing it. And so there are multiple ways to participate in the vote this November. Please take 5 minutes and apply for that vote by mail ballot, and then take another 5 minutes to complete it and put it in the mail. Our lives are depending on it now.
Okay. So thank you so much.
Thank you,
Again, you can definitely reach out to Anuj or the congressman. I believe you can just go on the website and just look up Dwight Evans. He is
House.gov.
Yes, and you can definitely reach out to Anuj. I know that he's on social media. If you have any questions or concerns or anything, issues that you would want answers to, and he would definitely reach out to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you
so much for coming on. And so now I'm going. Oh yes, thank you. And hopefully I'll definitely have you back again. This was really good, and I'm that type of guy. I like these conversations. It helps me understand a lot of things. All right. So thank you. Now I'm just going to kind of bring on some of my friends. We're going to kind of talk about what's going on in politics now. There's a lot of things that are going on. Donald Trump just did an interview yesterday. We have a nominee almost for the Democratic Party. We have a convention coming up. There's going to hopefully be some sort of a vice presidential pick. So we're trying to figure that out. So I'm going to bring on one of my good friends, Shad. Shad is a politico that has been doing work here in Pennsylvania, out in South Carolina. He worked on a couple of presidential campaigns, and he's done a lot of political work here in the state of Pennsylvania. I'm also going to bring on my good friend Leo Greenberry. I know Leo from way back when. We've worked on campaigns together. He's done community work with me. He is now pursuing being a public school teacher, and has the most important job in the world right now. He is now a father. And so I believe this should be a pretty good conversation. I just kind of want to bring them both on. Hello, Rashad, and hello, Leo. How are you guys? Hello. All right. So, I mean, the first thing I want to get to is let's talk about this VP presidential election that's coming up. I mean, I know that we have this huge convention coming up, and it's going to be virtual, so this is going to be brand new. I can't hear you yet, Rashad, for some reason. You're not coming through. Your sound is not working. So, but we have this convention coming up, and we're waiting for them to do some sort of a VP pick. Who do you think right now is one of the people that you would be most comfortable with being picked for a VP as far as Joe Biden is concerned? And so I will let you go, Rashad. Are you in there? You got the sound set up good? No, we can't hear you still, man. But I'll let you go, Leo. What do you think is? Oh yeah, I can hear you now. Oh, you fancy? You got a microphone.
I mean, I'm a singer. I mean, what you want? So I'm sticking with Susan Rice. Yeah, I'm sticking with Susan Rice. I think that she will bring stability. Donald Trump as president has been very catastrophic when it comes to our international reputation and dealing with our allies and so forth. And Joe Biden is assumed to be like the foreign policy guy. But when you're going in to repair breaches and repair relationships and fix things that are broken, you need more than one person that knows the people in the room, more than one person that can pull their strength to a relation, and pull the strength of their relationships in the room to make things happen. So I'm still sticking with Susan Rice.
Okay. How about you, Leo? What you think, man?
Well, my background, I come from a pretty conservative family, and I kind of just took a left turn at some point when I turned in my early 20s. So my impressions of Susan Rice when I was younger is that to conservatives, they will find a way to whip up the fury over Susan Rice the same way that they did with Hillary Clinton. Susan Rice is arguably more qualified than many of the men in the past that have been considered for the vice presidential role. And yet I see her being a lightning rod for the right as far as that perspective goes. So really the question is the Democratic Party united enough to rally around a Rice VP pick? I've really focused in on Kamala Harris and Susan Rice as being my top two. I think it's super important to have a woman on the VP selection, and obviously a woman of color would really mean a lot. As far as Harris goes, as I understand it, she is a liability to some in the African American community. Perhaps, you could speak more on that. But, as far as how she polls nationally, as of right now, everybody kind of says, she's not super attackable, other than, her past record and the legal stuff that she did in California. As far as who are we trying to attract here? We have Joe Biden on the ticket, who is obviously going after that working class swing Democratic voter in Michigan and Pennsylvania and these other areas. How can we get a VP pick that's going to whip up excitement within the Democratic Party without eliciting so much liability backlash from Republicans?
Well, let me say this. I mean, first off, does the VP pick need to be black? I mean, I know that Jim Clyburn just said in an interview that he was more interested in having a black Supreme Court justice than he was in having a black VP. I'm looking at Susan Rice, and she's never been elected to any public office, and we don't even know what she would look like as far as policy is concerned outside of foreign relations. And so do you think that there is any other candidate that may not necessarily be a woman of color? And just to kind of throw it back at you, Rashad, it looked like you kind of winced or looked surprised when he was saying that Kamala wouldn't necessarily be a weight on the ticket. So my question to you is what do you feel about those two things? And I think it's all three of them. One, does it need to be a black woman as a VP? Should we just be more concerned about a Supreme Court justice that is African-American woman? And how do you feel about Susan Rice not having been elected to public office, being on the ticket?
So I'm not going to answer the last question because I've already said that Susan Rice is still my number one. So obviously I'm fine with that.
You don't care about
that. So I will say this. I'm not going to do a side-by-side comparison of who I like for VP and why, because this is the person that I like with Joe Biden, right? I'm not a Joe Biden fanatic. So if you're asking me who I want to be his vice president, who will make me feel comfortable enough to vote for him, I just told you. Right. If we were having this conversation about Bernie Sanders, to me, hands down, it's not a question that his vice president should be a Barbara Lee or a Stacey Abrams or a Val Demings. Right. If we were having this conversation about Elizabeth Warren, it's not a question. Her vice president should be Cory Booker or Julian Castro Julian. So it's like, if we're talking about when we're picking a vice president, we're not picking, we like this person will be a good fit because I just like this person. You're asking for a missing piece of the puzzle. You're asking, who do you trust when your president is not reliable or is not available or is incapacitated? who do you trust to lead day one if something should happen to the president? So if we're talking about a Joseph Robinette Biden, my pick is Susan Rice. Like, that's who I'm riding with. That's who I'm championing for. With this Zoom convention that they're going to be doing in a few weeks. Like, I'm on the Rice train. I'm in the Rice Bowl. Okay. I'm on the Rice train. I'm here with Susan. Like,
well, let me ask you a question, then. I'm gonna shoot this to Leo. Leo, I mean, considering that, like, I'll say this: I am a liberal. I was not happy with Joe Biden, but that's beyond the point, right? We're here now. Do you really think this VP pick is that important? Do you think this is really going to help people make the decision of if they're going to really go between our commander in chief, President Donald Trump, or do you think that whoever the VP pick is, we're still all going to have to vote for Joe Biden, and it doesn't really matter?
I mean, yes, I do believe that. I believe that it's in the minds of many Americans, it is pivotal who Joe Biden picks because of perceptions. He is the oldest nominee. If he'd be the oldest president by the day that he takes his oath and everything. And I think that your average layman American who has a layman understanding of politics probably cares a lot about that. And that probably goes for, the liberal side and the conservative side. Like I said, the conspiracy theories, and I say conspiracy theories with all capital letters, with Susan Rice, I mean, it's ridiculous. All of it. It's total trash that the right has made up about her for years. And, if it's Rice, if we want to continue to have the same Benghazi conversation over again, as long as I don't mind it being Rice at all. I think that she's gonna, she's not a stupid woman. She's gonna be able to sidestep that. But I think for the next 4 years, I think that more and more and more conspiracy theories are going to build because, that's what the right does. Like, they build hatred, and they build hatred especially around women. They did it to Hillary Clinton. They did it to Michelle Obama. I mean, this is, there's an equation here, and it seems to work well with their base.
So you're saying that maybe we should be going with somebody with so much baggage. And that's really a good point.
No.
Here's the thing. Being connected to Susan Rice.
Here's the thing is we live in a dichotomous time where, depending on which side you're on, you literally perceive the world in a completely different way. To all of us, to the three of us, I respect Susan Rice's experience in government, the way she's been able to conduct herself with foreign policy. I respect that about her. And I also reject all the conspiracy theories that I've read. I perceive them. I've read them and perceived them as conspiracy theories. But if you see the world in a different light, Susan Rice is probably somebody that enrages you because of Benghazi, or whatever other crazy stuff they make up.
I will say, in my personal opinion, Susan Rice is actually the black woman that I would probably feel the most comfortable with out of all the other black women that they have presented. It seemed like that you needed to say something in response, that you had something on your mind, because it seemed like you adjusted your bang for a second and put it behind.
I did. I fixed it. Not the bang. So this is my thing. I don't work for the DNC or any of its committees. And as I've said in many speeches in Democratic Party settings, I am not the DNC's representative to my community, to whatever community I'm in that day. I am my community's representative and spokesperson at whatever room and whatever room I'm in, whatever great man I'm before, whatever table I'm seated at for that day. I could care less I am no longer going to support a party that doesn't give people who've earned their opportunity, who paid their dues, who've done their due diligence under the guise of, well, conservatives are going to have a field day. We knew conservatives were going to have a field day with Hillary Clinton, and guess what? She was still the nominee. We knew the conservatives were going to have a field day with Joe Biden, and guess what? He's still the nominee. We knew that conservatives in Tennessee didn't like Al Gore, but guess what? He was still the nominee. Like, we knew that Bill Clinton had issues, and guess what? He was reelected. We knew that Barack Obama was going to face racism. He didn't know that. Everybody else in America did. Even white people knew that. Everybody knew it except him. And he was still the nominee.
Because I'm back in
I did. And I will. And I worked for him twice, and I'm going to do it. Thanks. You're welcome. And not only was he the nominee, he was also reelected. So we're no longer in the place where we can tell Black women who vote at 98 out of 100 Black women every time they vote for the Democratic Party, period. Like, they literally straight line vote, period, every time. We're not going to continue to tell Black women that they can't be in office because of their hair or because of their complexion or because they wear or do not wear high heels or because they prefer to wear pantsuits or because they have children or because they have, a child by a person who's not their husband from like whatever they were when they were younger, they made mistakes or just living their best life and it wasn't a mistake. Doesn't matter. We give all of these parameters to Black women and Black men whenever it's their chance, whenever it's their turn. And we don't support them as a party the way we should. The voters in Maryland are so raggedy, okay? The Democrats in Maryland are so hell-bent on not voting for a Black man. Maryland has had several opportunities to put a Black Democrat in as governor, not just being jealous, but also Congressman Anthony Brown. So like you're talking about Leonardo, you're talking about the conservatives having a field day. What about these raggedy Democrats who have field days by themselves? Like, we're coming to class, they're coming to field day. Okay. They're out here while we're focusing trying to study. They're out here doing a 40-yard dash with Black lives and Black minds and Black art and Black policies. They're having a field day. They're having a wonderful day. 40-yard dash, 3-legged sack race, hopping and all kind of stuff out there doing the conga line, having them an amazing time like it's United Nations Day at the Olympics. While Black people are over here doing the work, keeping the lights on in the party. So like, I'm gonna have to push back a whole lot on the notion that because Susan Rice listened to the military intelligence that was given to her and a mistake was made, that we're going to say that this lady is garbage. No, she wasn't the only person that listened to the advice that was given to her. How many presidents that were white men listened to their joint chiefs, to their secretaries of defense and other departments and made cataclysmic and catastrophic mistakes? No one said anything. No one cared. Oh, we're just going to pray for our leader. But because it's a Black woman, absolutely not. I'm not here for it. And I'm going to
ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. So I think that there's a privilege that's just given to white men in politics.
That's not my problem. Our job is not to further that. Like, we see we address it.
We recognize that with Barack Obama, we still got him in and all that kind of stuff. I think that there's just probably a general problem with the Democratic Party, period. And I think that there is a generational issue of where there is, and oddly enough, which is surprising to me, that the younger generation has a higher standard for politicians than the older generation does. And sometimes I think that I'm not sure where that necessarily comes from. Is it coming from a place of where they have low expectations for their politicians because of the past politicians? Because if you look back in history at some of the politicians that they've grown up with, they were kind of messed up. You're talking about people like Reagan and Bush and Bill Clinton and all these people, like they were just kind of they were very weird creatures, right? Where they had these issues that people just overlooked. And so us coming into the fold, we have this idealism and this standard of what we believe should happen in this country. And so we have a higher standard for our politicians and a higher standard for our political parties. And we feel like things should change faster. Leo, like, do you think that's something that holds us back from change, or do you think that that's something that's going to help us? And who should we judge for that?
Whew, that's a hard question. I was just kind of going through all the things you just put out in that last 20 seconds. All right. It could be a good thing. It could be. And I'm standing back. But I will say, I mean, I just graduated from UPenn with a major in middle grades social studies education. So I think about what my responsibility is to teaching kids, hopefully in a Philadelphia classroom soon enough. But what is my responsibility? How will I teach them the history? Because the danger is you teach history about, let's say colonial farming, and kids today will say, wow, those people were idiots. I can't believe they just grew up on a farm. That's a stupid thing to do. If we go back to 1992 or 1980 or whatever, to an older system within our democracy, Bill Clinton wasn't weird. The people that voted for him, they didn't think they were weird. They didn't think that Clinton was a creature, or Jimmy Carter, or really even Reagan, because I mean, Reagan won however much of the electorate, a lot. That there was a time when the Democratic and Republican parties were much closer in commonality. And in my opinion, I think that has to do with the amount of white folks within each of those parties at the time. And, obviously what you said earlier about black folks kind of doing the work within the Democratic Party, I wholeheartedly believe that. I grew up in Maryland, so I know exactly what you're talking about.
Trash.
So, yeah,
Democrat.
I agree 100%. I grew up in PG County, so I know what you're saying is the truth. So, I think, and real quick, because I want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to talk on this. I think that it could be a good thing. The idealism could be a good thing. But what we're doing is, we now have the separation, and now the thing that I'm observing from a historiological perspective is that people have given in more to their emotions than what the actual facts or truth might be. This happens to a much greater extent with the right, and it's so far, in my opinion, where they're much more keen to believe conspiracy theories, or they go into a situation with a point of view. They find that random fringe news article that just advances that point of view. I see that much more commonly on the right, much less to the left, but people on both sides are obsessed with the purity factor. They want their politicians to give them everything. And
that's so bad.
And so I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It could be a good thing, but we need to figure out a way to get more people to understand why it's a good thing. And that's the hard part.
Leo, I'm gonna have to disagree with you on that part. Like, I do think it's a bad thing. I think there is fundamentally something wrong with an individual who has a higher expectation of everyone else than they have on themselves. And I think, Alex, that goes to the point you were making earlier about young people having this litmus test. And it's not a litmus test of we want you to be perfect. It's a litmus test of game recognize game. Real recognize real. So if you're telling me that you're the pro family values candidate, then you better be pro family values. You better not be trying to, be out here slurping and burping in airport bathrooms. We better not find you out here on these apps, and nobody better be calling you Lady G on Twitter if you're gonna be the family's values candidate. If you're gonna be like pro public education and you like riding hard for these education unions, like your kids better not be in private school. Like, I ain't saying I got a problem with private school. What I'm saying is I got a problem with you telling me to put my kids in public school and your kids in private school. So I don't think there's anything wrong with expecting your politicians to live the lives that they're trying to exert over you. If you're gonna force me, if you want me to be this this singular dimensionally, like, brain warped robot drone of a human being, then you better be one too. Like, if I'm gonna be a Stepford wife, you better be a Stepford wife too. But they're not that. So, like, they want to create a utopia where everyone lives how they want you to live, but then they want to go do what they want to do. And that's not working in today's society, especially with our generation and the ones coming up behind us. Like, the ones behind us, like, we're mad. Like, people like, oh, you're so hostile. No, I'm not. I'm giving you what you need. You just don't know you need it. The ones behind me, they like the queen from Alice in Wonderland, like off with her head. They're chopping necks, and they don't care. They give no cares about it. Like, so if you're not gonna be the person that you say you are, just shut up. That's all the kids behind us are asking. Don't try to impede my life if you're not going to at least be the person you say you are. And I don't think that's too much to ask for. I think that's fair.
That's the thing. I think that there's a feeling of projection of values, right? Instead of internalizing and embodying those values. I think a lot of people feel like they need to project a certain look or way of thinking or a way of being on other people, but don't want to accept it for themselves. And so when we look at politicians, and as they're trying to be everything for everybody, they need to have this standard that they think they have. But when you do get behind closed doors with them, and being somebody who has worked on political campaigns and have been staff members to people, you see the other side of their life. And so you kind of recognize, like you said, game recognizes game, especially coming up in some of these conservative families that have a lot of these conservative values. Let me ask you a question. Do you think that our politics is going to start to reflect this at some point? Or do you think that these young people are going to grow up and begin to take on some of these conservative views and kind of change some of their idealism? And I can throw that back to you, Leo.
Well, I'll start with something that, I had a conversation with my dad, and me and my dad, we see completely differently the whole world. And, I talked to him, I said, you traumatized me in a lot of ways, Dad. You're cold, emotionally distant, all this, that, and the other, And I said, well, I'm going to try and do my best to not be so cold and emotionally distant to my own son. I think that emotional intelligence is very important in getting people to understand other people. And my dad was silent, and he just kind of looked up at me and says, well, what I'm hearing you say is you're going to get a chance to mess up your own child in your own very special way. And so I think that I'd like to think that there's a part of me that's still very optimistic that the young people in this country will get us toward course correction. I hope I didn't come off like a pessimist in our chat, but I do think that young people are more willing to do the work. They see it laid out before them. I mean, literally, Gen Z watching a president have a full-on temper tantrum, threatening to take away their app. You know what I mean? They see it. This is the kind of stuff that really, it's an app, and I'm 30 years old. I don't care as much, but you see a 15-year-old and they're like, wow, we pranked the president and now he's threatening to do this stuff. So I'm telling you, whatever it takes to get people out there, I think young people do have more fire than we've seen in the past. And that's a good thing. It gets them more engaged. And so I do have some hope there, at least for Gen Z, millennials at least. And I think that, at some point when we do take the reins, we have to make hay while the sun shines. And I think that it's coming soon. It is coming soon. The older powers that be cannot hold on for much longer. And so it will manifest itself. We'll get to live out our own truth in the way we see the world. And even younger Republicans. And I've talked with a lot of younger Republicans too.
Very different.
They are shifted to the left. Even they see like the point. Like if you take a moment and talk with those guys or gals, even they see the point of like, there is a need for government interference more so than what we're seeing. Government oversight, not interference, but government oversight over things. And there is a point to government intervention for helping people. And that's across the board. So I expect to see a shift for everybody to the left once we get the reins of power. People will come out and just be like, "Oh yeah, I was all for that." So,
what do you think, Rashad?
So let's restate the original question because Leo took me to another place and I want to answer your question. So what's your question?
You said Leo took me to another place. I said, do you think that the generation behind us and we will grow out of this idealism that we have as it relates to policies in the world and the politics?
Yeah, I think the generation behind us is like society is becoming genderless. And society is becoming colorless. I meet more people every day. I just can't tell what they are. And then there's a South African guy in my network, whose name is Hispanic, and he was born and raised in South Africa. His family's from South Africa. I think he was born in South Africa, but he was raised in Massachusetts, right? I meet people and I'm expecting them to look one way because of their name, right? And then it's, the person in front of me is someone completely different. So I think that as society becomes more genderless and more colorless, as people deal with their different levels of guilt, right? For whatever reason, whether it's because of their wealth or their the sins of their forefathers, as people begin to figure out what to do with themselves in this space that the world is creating, the only values that are going to be there are going to be the principles that we don't get to, right? Because we argue so much, we haven't even had a chance to talk about what is being a good neighbor in 2020? The Bible teaches us to love our neighbors as we love ourselves. And I think that even though the world is going to get crazier, to your point, I think the generation behind us, they're going to be better neighbors. They're going to actually care about whether or not their neighbor is eating. They're going to care as to whether or not their neighbor's lights are on. They're going to care about, do the kids running up and down the block, are they going to be hit by somebody driving crazy? Do they have shoes? Are they getting 3 meals a day? What are, I think as society creates this space for you to see police officers kneeling on someone's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, for you to see, someone be killed in front of their wife and their daughter on a Facebook Live. As we begin to see the world for what it really is, I think the kids coming up, they're rejecting the generational curse of racism and bigotry and xenophobia and all types of other words that, are synonyms for hateful and trifling, right? They're rejecting those things that they're being raised in. So I don't think the world is going to be all Democrat, because the Democrats don't always get it right. The liberals don't always get it right. But the world is definitely moving from a place where the hatred of conservatism is going to be a mask that we put over things and that we paint over. Like what conservatism is going to get back to being what it was originally about, which was money. Like this is gonna, a lot of our battles are really black versus red. Like at the end of the month, does your banking statement that comes in the mail or to your email at the end of the month, the bottom number, is it in the black or is it in the red? Like that's what these battles are going to get back to, because the hatred of race and the hatred of women and their femininity, their gender, the hatred of brown people who speak a different language or were born with a different native tongue, the hatred of the indigenous folks who were here before all of us got here, right? And who had their land sold from. The hatred of people of color is going to be leaving policy, and it's going to get back down to black versus red. Like, is this for poor people or is this for the extremely wealthy? And the real question is, what do the people in between do? Like, who do they?
I think. Oh, go ahead. I think you bring up a really good point, because I think that the generation behind us don't place so much stock, and we were talking about these values, right? They don't place stock in these projected values of what they think society should be. I mean, when you start to break down these barriers of, I can't deal with that person, or I can't like that person because of sexuality, or I can't like this person because of, their gender, or I can't like this person because of their religion or their color. Like when you start to break those things down, you're right. You start to just get to the crux of the basis of all these arguments. I have no reason to feel like you are less than. I have no reason to dehumanize you. Now I have to really get to the crux of why I don't agree with you, or if I do agree with you, or get to what we actually do agree with when we break down all these other projected values that were kind of taught to us in these silos because the world wasn't as interconnected as it is now. That's a really great message of hope. And like, I never thought about it like that. And I think I've always said that I have been excited about this next generation because they are able to break down these projected values, right? That we have projected on the world and other people that, like you said, when we go into the back in our own closets and our own little spaces and corners, we tend to allow those things to come out, those dark sides of us that we can't show to the public to come out of us. And so that's a really great message of hope. Thank you for that, Rashad. And I think that's a great space to end on. You guys are awesome. Is there a message or is there a quote that you would like to leave with people, and how can people connect with you if they want to stay connected with you and watch your careers as you move along in this great space we call life?
I'll go first. So I think there is a quote that I like called, I think it goes, far and away, the best prize that life has to offer is the chance to work hard at work worth doing. Whatever you're doing, do it well, and what you believe it passionately. And that ought to carry you 99% of the way to the finish line. I do a lot of volunteer work in my community. I'm an admin for a Buy Nothing Project group on Facebook. Buy Nothing Project is focused on creating hyperlocal gift-giving economies. I do stuff for the election. I volunteer to be a tabulator for the mail-in ballots, which Mr. Gupta talked about earlier on your show. Super important. What he said, the two things, voting and doing the census. Absolutely 100%. I say that as a judge of elections, a tabulator, and I'm working for the Census Bureau right now. That what he said is so pivotally important for especially the African American community that is so grossly underrepresented in our politics. We all need to do what we can. Me, in any way possible, however I can help that community, that's what I'm going to try to do. And even from within the community, I know you're doing the good work out there, Alex. And obviously, Rashad, I just met you, but you made it clear to me that you do the work every day. So, a lot of respect there. So yeah, and if anybody wants to follow me, you know, I've got a Facebook. There's a woman way more beautiful than me on it. That's my wife. Find me, Leo Greenberry, and I'm also on LinkedIn. So
Yes, Rashad specializes in ministry, honey. He likes to drop ministry wherever he can. Go ahead, Rashad. What would you like to lead the saints?
I hate your guts, Alex. I hate your guts. So you can follow me on Instagram at _real Leo Greenberry. I'm joking. On Instagram, I'm Raji, RAHGIE, Raji the Haji. So Raji. What would I leave? Like, I don't really have an inspirational. I don't have a quote, but what I would say is just a brief testimony. I started my political consulting firm November of 2009. That was my first time like consulting on a race, and I like did all my paperwork and all of this stuff. And then I've worked like for so many people and doing other things. A lot of times I forget that I'm a business owner. And I'm saying that to say yesterday when I woke up, I had a phone call of a former client of mine saying, hey, I have this opportunity. I'm going to send you an RFP. I want you to get your ducks in a row and apply for it. I think this would be some really great work for you. So I'm saying that to say, like, to the dreamers out there, whatever you're dreaming about, whatever it is you want to accomplish, you feel like you can't because you don't have the right certifications, or you don't know as much as somebody else, you didn't finish that degree, you're, you know, whatever, you're one chapter away from, you know, going back to defend your thesis or your dissertation or whatever is going on in your life. Do it. Just like get up, figure it out, do it. Like don't allow your insecurities to stop your blessings. So that would be what I would leave to everyone out there. Just get up and do it. Figure it out. Call somebody. I mean, they got Rocket Lawyer, LegalZoom, all kind of people out there to help you figure out your paperwork. Go. You probably know a lawyer who ain't doing nothing. So tell them to help you out and give you a good discount. But you can follow me on Instagram, Raji, RAHGIE. I'm on Facebook as Rashad the Progressive, I believe. But and then I would just also encourage you, yes, do the census. Look, y'all know it's real when the census done got the Sesame Street characters and the Muppets out here doing commercials for y'all. So please go now. But obviously the census got plenty of money, but it's broke because they ain't have Elmo or Big Bird do a commercial. So obviously they ain't got enough. They ain't got enough bread. Because if you ain't got Elmo or Big Bird, the budget wasn't big enough. But please fill out the census. Please make sure you vote. And just please understand, like, this is the thing that upsets me about society right now. Like, everyone will sit there and say, oh my God, Trump's a liar. Oh my God, he's horrible. He's a criminal. He's this, he's that. And then when you say, hey, did you do such and such? Well, they said it was not safe. The person that you just said is a liar and a criminal and you can't trust just told you don't go vote, and you're not going to vote because they said it's not safe. But you literally just said 5 minutes ago that he wasn't known for telling the truth, right? So this is the point where, like, we have to start taking the onus on us. Like, look for credible news sources. Stop clicking everything just because it has a cute title. Stop listening to everything just because it's coming out of your favorite talking head. Find independent articles. You cannot trust Fox News or CNN right now. Go to Time Magazine, read the New York Times, read the Washington Post, find credible news sources. Okay, like just do your due diligence, do your part for you to stay informed, because obviously the news on Facebook, CNN, and Fox News can't be trusted, right? So find mediums that you can trust. Read 2 or 3 articles about the same thing. Formulate your own opinion. That's all I want the Senate to do, Alex. Like, I'm just like, I don't mind answering questions on Facebook and text messages. Like, I'll help. But like, if I can't help you if you're gonna fight me based on what these people who we know we can't trust are telling you. Like, I just don't I can't get it. Don't call me asking me is it okay to vote, and then I tell you you should go vote and tell you how you can be safe, and then you argue with me. Well, Trump said that it was felonious. He's a felon. So you're gonna listen to a felon say something else is felonious. Okay, I don't understand. I don't understand.
Thank you.
I have so much more to say to that. You took me through that.
And I went to the office in the morning.
Oh man, see, we're gonna have to go offline.
Okay,
We're gonna have to go offline. I'll keep talking. Oh man.
Thank you so much, guys. I'm gonna have to do a show where I just have a whole bunch of us and we just get up here, we just talk about stuff. I think it was good. It was a good conversation. And we'll probably have to get back on again and just talk about stuff. Because clearly Donald Trump's interview yesterday was pure comedy. Like it was like straight out of an SNL skit. Like I rewinded a piece of it and laughed out loud over and over again. I mean, this man had papers and was handing him papers like, look at this. And the guy was like, well, yeah, this isn't right. Like, this is right if you're not looking at it compared to the amount of, or like, he's like, or this isn't, okay, whatever. Like, Trump looked like a crazy man. Y'all have to go and see this interview that happened.
I'm not watching it. Look here.
Let me tell you something. It is pure. If you ever had a question about Trump's competency, that right there gave you everything you needed. And I'm sure that
interview didn't tell me nothing I didn't already know.
Yeah,
I don't understand why everybody's acting like they're surprised.
I'm sorry. Okay, look, I gotta end this. But yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Leo.
This is like exactly what Rashad said. Like every one of these books that come out, like Trump's a racist. I knew it back in the 70s. Trump's a racist. I knew it back in the 80s. Trump's a racist. I knew it back in the 90s. Even if I never read any one of those books, I mean, I read one of them. Even if I never read another one of those books, I could look out here every single day. Every single day, his presidency is devoted to destroying this country with like racial tension and using the police as a military force and using the federal government's resources to oppress everybody. It is clear as day. I don't need to see any more about his past. The only past I need to see is the last 3.5 years. He's got a track record. The proof is in the pudding. We got more than enough pudding to look at. I don't need to read another damn book. I don't need to see another interview. I know exactly where I stand on it. And guess what? I don't even know who this interview was for. Like, in the sense that we all think it's just cannon fodder. It's just something to laugh at, or just laugh off one day. And then conservatives, they don't care. They don't care at all. Then they didn't even look at it. I bet if I talked with a lot of my conservative friends, they didn't even watch. It doesn't even matter to them. They have their man, and he is not ours. That's the world we live in. But it was also hilarious. Like I died laughing.
Yeah. All right, y'all. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I'm gonna do my closeout rant or whatever talk. It should take me about 5 minutes. Thank you so much for coming on last minute. I appreciate you guys. You guys are awesome. Y'all be back on soon. All right.
Hope so.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Thank you. So, this conversation went from really, really heavy and dense to kind of lighthearted, and I think that's what I kind of wanted to happen. Thank you so much. As usual, you can follow me on YouTube, Talks with Alex. You can follow me on Facebook. Go to my like page, Alex Deering. I also have Instagram, j.alex.deering. And you can also follow me on Twitter, Deering_Alex. Thank you so much. I just want to kind of leave with you. We are living in great times, and I think that Rashad kind of really put it into context for me. This generation and this next generation, we're breaking down the barriers of justifications for hate. Where people use religion to do it, where people use their hate of sexuality to do it, or their hate of gender or other people's races. All these things are being broken down and just put in the forefront. and saying, look, they really don't matter. At the end of the day, we are all human beings. We're all out here trying to survive. We're all out here wanting to be happy and live a life free of other people trying to impose on us their conservative views or their issues, and then go behind closed doors and do whatever they want to. Because at the end of the day, we all have issues that we deal with, whether we do it in public or whether we do it behind closed doors. The goal is to treat everybody like they're a human being. And this next generation is making me excited about them being able to do that, just treating each other like we're just all human beings with issues. All right. So guys, thank you so much for watching Talks with Alex. We kind of went a little bit over today because it was kind of like an unconventional show. If you guys have any ideas that you would like to let me have about shows, or if you would like to be on the show, just simply let me know. I'd be more than happy to discuss any topics that you guys think you're important. Just send me a DM or send me a message, or and let me know. All right. Thank you so much for following me. Thank you so much for listening for this hour and a half. And I'll talk to you another time. I'll talk to you next week at 8 o'clock with Talks with Alex on YouTube and on Facebook.